I was around 16 or 17 years old when I started babysitting for money. It wasn't too frequent of a job. I'd probably get a babysitting gig 3 to 4 times a month if I was lucky. It was decent money for a teen at my age during the time, and it helped me learn how to save and know what an income felt like. Most of my customers were the same people, either friends of a relative, a neighbor, or a friend of a friend. One summer, I think it was my summer break between junior and senior year, I decided to take my business onto Craigslist. My ads offered to house sit as well, since I figured it would be twice as easy than watching a kid. I had a lot of free time and wanted the extra money. The ads I posted there worked better than I thought they would. My first 3 jobs were really easy and were just to house sit over a weekend while families would go on a quick vacation. It was the easiest money I've ever made. After finishing a house sitting job, I checked my Craigslist posting and noticed that I got a message from a potential customer. This job was different though. They asked me to watch their pet for a few days while they were out of town. I obviously said yes since their pet was a cat, and I grew up owning cats, and they're pretty much the easiest pet to watch over while their owners are away. Plus, the offer was a bit more than I usually get on a typical job. This job was set for this upcoming weekend. A few days went by and I began to slowly get more information as the week went on. My client's name is Todd. It's just him and his cat, whose name is Sophia. She's an orange tabby with blue eyes with a pink nose and pink collar with a bell on it. Todd also lives on the outskirts of our area. It's a bit woody in that area, but the houses are close enough to walk to. I pack my bags the day before the weekend starts and let my parents know where I'm going to be and gave them the address and house number in case they needed to contact me. I had a cell phone at the time, but this particular area is known to have bad reception. On my drive there, I enjoyed the scenery. It was quite beautiful where I lived. Lots of nature and wildlife running about. When I arrived at Todd's house, he was already waiting outside for me. I hate to use stereotypes, but Todd looked exactly how I thought he would. A man somewhere between 35 and 40, balding, thick glasses, wears baggy polos, and smells like bologna. He was very sweet though and introduced me to Sophia shortly after I arrived. She was the sweetest cat and immediately showed affection towards me as soon as we met. Todd showed me around his house. It was actually quite big for someone who lives alone. The inside had a very cozy feeling. It looked like the inside of any regular 2-story cabin in the woods. There was a fireplace with the TV right on top. The couch in the living room was an L-shaped leather couch. There were adjustable lights in the living room as well. Upstairs there was only 3 rooms and a bathroom. The only door was the guest bedroom, which was already set up for me with clean sheets. Todd gave me the rundown of where the cat food was in the kitchen, how to work the hot water, the cell phone, and he even gave me some pamphlets for local restaurants to get food delivered. Right before we exchanged goodbyes, he let me know that this house makes a lot of weird noises at night and to not let it spook me. He made sure to emphasize that part, to not let it scare me. Todd made his way out and I waved to him goodbye as he pulled out of the driveway. Now it was just Sophia and I. I surprisingly had enough cell phone service to be on my phone. Sophia and I hung out in the living room and watched some TV while I was browsing on my phone a bit. Hours went by with nothing really going on other than Sophia being playful. It's around 6:30 now and we were both starting to get hungry. I went into the pantry to grab her food and looked at the local restaurants on my phone. I was scrolling through my phone when I heard a long creak of what sounded like a door from upstairs. Sophia and I looked right at each other when we heard it. I immediately remembered what Todd told me and chose to ignore it as best I could. Sophia resumed her eating and I did the same and went back on my phone. I couldn't help but think what made that noise. My curiosity got the best of me and I headed upstairs. Each step made squeaks that seemed to echo throughout the house. I eventually made it up to the 2nd floor. At the end of the hall, I saw the last door just barely open. The door was between halfway open and halfway closed, as if it just needed one last tap to be fully closed. I walked up to the door and crept it open. But then I realized this isn't my home, and snooping around wouldn't be courteous. I shut the door and made my way downstairs. As soon as my foot touched the last step, I heard the creaking sound again. My instinct was to go up there and investigate, but I decided to follow Todd's advice and not let it scare me, so I ignored it. Nothing else happened throughout the night. The next morning I woke up, fed Sophia, and decided to grab some food out in town. It was a very quiet area, and it was very relaxing to be out by myself and enjoy the scenery. I started heading back after a couple of hours. When I got to Todd's, I could hear Sophia's collar jingle while she came up to greet me. Sophia and I started to play a bit, which led us into the kitchen. That's when I noticed the pantry door was open. I could have sworn I closed it. My initial thought was that Sophia is smart enough to know where her food is and how to open doors. I didn't think anything of it and closed it. The day went on and eventually it was nighttime again. I did the routine of feeding Sophia and eating my leftovers from earlier. Tonight I felt like watching a movie, so I scrolled through the channels and saw that Todd has HBO. No Country for Old Men just started, so I decided to pick that. The movie wasn't what I expected, and before I knew it, my eyes started to get heavy, and eventually I fell asleep. When I woke up, I nearly had a heart attack. The TV screen was paused, and the image on the screen was the old lady in the mirror from Insidious. I quickly looked around for the remote and saw Sophia sitting next to it. The damn cat probably sat on it at the worst time. I turned off the TV and sat down with a sigh of relief. Sophia started to purr while walking all over my lap. I began to pet her and gave her head scratches, which made me notice that her collar is gone. It was one of those easily buckled ones, so she probably snagged it on something and made it pop off. I began to look around in the living room and the kitchen, but couldn't find it anywhere. While looking in the kitchen, I heard Sophia meow and saw that she was right next to the staircase. When I approached her, she meowed one more time and ran up the stairs. She wants me to follow her. This cat is smart. I walked up the stairs, and when I got up there, I saw Sophia at the end of the hall. I was a bit confused. All the doors were opened. I don't know how that's possible. Maybe Sophia did it. Cats can do weird things, but being in that house alone and seeing this gave me a weird feeling. I'll be honest, I didn't want to walk down that hallway. But I knew I had to close all the doors because, well, 1, I'm not supposed to go in any of the rooms other than the guest bedroom, and 2, Sophia isn't allowed in these rooms either. I slowly made my way down the hall, closing the doors on my way to Sophia. She was in between 2 rooms, Todd's bedroom and the second bedroom. My room was right across from them, so I closed my door first. I turned around and saw Sophia sitting on what I'm assuming is Todd's bed. Oh my god, I thought. Now I have to go in there and grab her. I walked up to her on the bed and she began to purr while slow blinking at me. I told her we have to go, we can't be in here. She jumped down next to my feet. Right when I was about to exit Todd's room, I heard the collar bell jingle. This isn't funny. Someone is in here. Sophia immediately knew what was happening and began to growl towards the doorway. Her ears perked back and she got really low. She doesn't like this either. What is it? I asked her. She then jumped back on the bed and onto the dresser where she jumped into my arms with her head buried into my chest, still growling. I had to walk out there and I really didn't want to. After standing there for what felt like forever, I slowly stepped towards the doorway. Nothing. I began a quick walk around the corner towards the staircase. Sophia picked up her head from my chest and looked over my shoulder. Her growls got louder and she began to hiss. That's when I heard the collar bell again. This time accompanied by heavy footsteps. My quick walk turned into a straight sprint for the stairs. When I made it down the staircase, everything stopped. I turned around and there was nothing there. The feeling of panic was putting it lightly. There's something here and I don't know what it is, nor do I want to know. I wanted to leave right then and there, but I couldn't leave Sophia behind. My body started to shake uncontrollably. I can't stay here. The only thing I could think of was to take Sophia and stay at a local motel, which is what I did. Todd is coming back tomorrow afternoon. He won't notice if I was gone for one night, right? It felt crazy to just up and leave like that, but what else was I supposed to do? I grabbed Sophia, some of her food, and left. We stayed in a motel that was about 15 minutes away. Sophia slept with me the whole night, and we stayed there until right before Todd was supposed to come back. When I got to the house, I figured I would just run inside, grab my things, and wait outside with Sophia until Todd arrived. I ran into the house and immediately noticed all the drawers in the kitchen were open, including the pantry door, the fridge, The TV was on, and the chairs in the dining room table were all turned around. I just already knew the doors upstairs were open too, and they were. Quickly, I closed everything and turned off the TV and shut all the doors upstairs and tried my best to make everything look normal. Todd arrived as soon as I stepped outside. I wanted to tell him what happened, but I was too embarrassed and something told me he already knew. He gave me the money and we exchanged goodbyes. Just before I got into my car to leave, Todd said something. "You got scared, didn't you?" This story takes place during spring break in 2015. My parents at the time were going through a divorce, so they weren't really home a lot, at least not at the same time. My older sister was visiting too. She went to a college that was about 4 hours away. I know the stereotype of a brother and sister hating each other when they're young, but my sister and I were almost like best friends. We really looked out for one another, especially during everything that was happening with our parents at the time. Our parents both worked late at night and my dad was visiting less frequently since he was trying to find a new place to buy. I was excited for my sister to visit because I haven't seen her for months, and she also sometimes brings me along to parties as a designated driver. I know, not the most responsible thing to do, but I made sure she didn't go overboard, and knowing she's getting home safe after a night of drinking is a huge stress relief. So as predicted, she invited me to tag along to a college party as soon as she got home. I said yes and started getting ready for our night out. The party was an hour away at one of her friends' houses who she's known since high school. We had a gas up halfway there, and she proceeded to tell me about this guy who's been nonstop messaging her, asking her to hang out and stuff. I guess they met at a party and made out a bit. She doesn't remember giving him her number or even her name. I told her that's creepy as hell and she should probably block him. She said I wouldn't get it and we began to head for the party. When we arrived, it was like a typical college party. EDM music playing, the smell of alcohol, weed, and sweat. To be honest, I'm not a huge party person. I like hanging out with friends and people, but not in this kind of environment. Half the reason I come is just to keep an eye on my sister, and the other half is to attempt and fail to flirt with her friends. We found a group of her friends playing Drunk Connect 4. We were talking and catching up while waiting for our turn. That's when one of her friends told her that Derek is here. The smile on my sister's face quickly changed, and I could see how that name immediately sobered her up. I had a suspicion who Derek was, but asked anyway. "It's her stalker," one of her friends said while trying to pass it as a joke. My sister told her it's not funny, and kept looking around her shoulder. Her friend said that she saw him over an hour ago, and he's probably gone by now. My sister seemed a bit relieved. I decided to go grab a drink, non-alcoholic of course. I was hoping for water, but highly doubted they had any around here. I asked her friend where the drinks were, and she said right outside, so that's where I headed. There weren't many people outside, just a few small groups smoking cigarettes and non-cigarettes. I saw a small porch area that had kegs and coolers. I opened up one of the coolers and saw mostly beers, but a few sodas in there too. This is better than nothing, I thought. Just when I grabbed a Coke, there was a dude right next to me.
"You're not going to drink?"
He asked. I told him I'm the DD. He already had an open cup in his hand and gestured it towards me. I told him no, and that I don't even like to drink, which wasn't a lie.
"How are you going to party and not drink? Take it,"
he said. Again, I told him no, and I should head back inside. Then he stepped in front of my way to block me.
"I said take the fucking drink."
His whole demeanor changed, and he had a blank, sinister stare in his eyes. I never felt this kind of energy before, and without a thought, my hand started to go for the drink.
"Yo, what's going on here?"
Someone said from behind him. I recognized this person as one of my sister's friends, but didn't know him by name. This dude's attitude snapped back to normal like a light switch.
"Oh no, man, I thought he left his drink inside and was asking if it was his,"
he said.
"Yeah, fucking right, Derek. Go home,"
this friend said. My heart sank. Derek walked away, mumbling under his breath. The guy asked if I was good. He introduced himself as Trey and that he knows my sister, and said I should go back inside. I hurried inside and told my sister what happened. Her eyes widened. She said we should leave right now, and I agreed. On the drive home, she kept apologizing and that she should have known that he was going to be there. I told her it's fine and not to worry about it. "What's up with this Derek guy? How bad is it?" I asked. She then went into detail of how he tried to drug her friend, which he failed to do, and didn't know about it until after their little innuendo. She told campus police about this guy, and they reported back to her 2 weeks ago that he isn't even registered at the college. A wave of thoughts and emotions hit me all at once. I couldn't help but think what could have happened to my sister or even to me if I took that drink. I told her we should tell our parents. Our dad isn't the best dad, but one thing we've always agreed on is that he can be protective of us. When we finally made it home, we went inside and made some pizza rolls and watched Malcolm in the Middle to ease the tension. We always watched it together when we were younger. The nostalgia helped our anxiety. About 5 episodes in and we called it a night. She went up to her old room and I went to mine. I laid there replaying my interaction with Derek in my head. It was just then I realized, how did he know me? I doubt it was just a coincidence that he randomly chose me as his potential next victim. He knew who I was, and that was unsettling enough. I tried not to think about it. Eventually, after what seemed like an hour, I fell asleep. My sister woke me up in a panic. "I think Derek is here," she whispered. My adrenaline kicked in as soon as she said that. She showed me her phone, and on the screen was at least 20 missed calls from an unknown number. Then she went to her messages and showed me a picture sent to her just 5 minutes ago of our driveway. "Call the cops," I whispered. She dialed 911, and as soon as the operator picked up, we heard glass breaking from downstairs. My sister began to tell the operator the details of what's going on. The angle of my door gives me an almost completely clear view of the living room area. I crept up to it and slowly opened it just enough to peek my eye through. I couldn't see much. It was super dark and I just got done looking at my sister's phone screen, so my eyes haven't adjusted yet. I sat there listening to footsteps but not seeing where it's coming from. The footsteps suddenly stopped. There was no noise. My eyes finally adjusted. Standing in the living room was a hooded figure staring directly at me. I slammed the door shut and locked it. We could hear Derek running up the stairs and into my door. He was trying to break it down. My sister was hysterical and so was I. Meanwhile, Derek was slamming into my doors, yelling,
"Why didn't you answer my calls? I just want to talk. Why don't you just talk to me already? Just talk to me. Open the fucking door and talk to me, please."
He sounded like a child throwing a tantrum. He was practically crying while saying all these things. We didn't know what to do other than hide in the closet. It felt like forever, but eventually the cops showed up. Derek heard the sirens and booked it. I guess Derek was too slow because we could hear the cops yelling at someone. We made our way downstairs and realized the cops weren't yelling at Derek. They were yelling at our dad, who was profusely beating on Derek with his bare hands. It took 4 cops just to get our dad off of him. He was swearing at him up and down and threatening his life. It took several minutes for our dad to finally stop yelling. The cops cuffed Derek, and my sister gave him the whole story, which made our dad even angrier. That night was the scariest night of my life. After Derek got arrested and we pressed charges, he ended up getting 3 years in prison and a restraining order against him. The lawyers let us know that my sister isn't his first victim. Derek was apparently married but got a divorce, which spiraled him into stalking, harassing, and sending death threats to his ex-wife. She actually filed a restraining order against him too. We were more mad than anything at the fact that he barely got any repercussions during that whole ordeal with his ex. This was years ago now, and my sister and I haven't heard or seen Derek since the court hearing. A few years after that, I remembered the name of his ex-wife that the lawyer gave us. I decided to try and look her up on Facebook or Instagram. Her name was pretty common, so I scrolled through a lot of profiles, but one stuck out to me. It was this woman with the same name and everything. The reason she stuck out, though, was because she looked just like my sister. Hello. If you made it this far, thank you for watching and listening. I just wanted to give a brief explanation for this next story. I made it as a project for one of my classes and wanted to keep the length of it short, so you'll notice in this one I talk a bit fast than in my other ones. It's fairly quick, but falls underneath this subgenre. Anyway, thank you for watching and enjoy. My brother and sister-in-law have a small little farm out in the middle of practically nowhere. They seem to like it and he enjoys farm work pretty well. They had to go out of town for business on a weekend, so they asked me to keep an eye on the place and stay over to help feed the animals and take their dogs out. I was on break from college anyway, so I didn't really have anything too important going on. I arrived there in the afternoon. Their house looks like your average house on a farm that you see in the movies. 2-story, painted white, porch that wraps around, and a wired fence keeping the chickens and goats in the back. It honestly looked quite cozy and peaceful. There's a huge patch of woods in the back that seemed to go on forever from left to right too. I arrived when they were about to leave. They seemed a bit hesitant at first though. My brother gave me a rundown on how to feed the animals, when to feed them, where the automatic lights were at, and where the gun was. It seemed easy enough. I gave them both a hug and a good luck on their business trip and headed inside. I didn't have much to do the first night besides feed the dogs and take them out before 10 o'clock. They had HBO, so I started to binge watch The Wire to pass the time. 5 episodes in, and it was about time to let the dogs out, and I was starting to get hungry. While searching for some food, I found my brother's liquor cabinet. After letting the dogs out, I heated up some frozen pizza and poured a few shots. I sat down with my frozen pizza and began to watch some more of The Wire. Halfway through my pizza, I realized I didn't even let the dogs back in. I got up to go to the back door to let them in. When I got to the door, there was only one of the dogs waiting to be let in. I could only see him with the light from the kitchen, so I decided to find the automatic lights for outside and plug them in. When I plugged in the lights and looked outside, I was a bit unsure what to make out what I was seeing. All the animals outside were just gone. No goats, no chickens, nothing. I opened the back door to let the dogs in, but only one came in. I had to obviously find the others, so I grabbed a flashlight and headed out. The whole backyard is pretty much fenced in, and there was no sign of it being messed with. The automatic lights only shine up to a certain distance. It covers mostly the whole front property, but only a quarter of the back. I turned on the flashlight and began to look around for this dog. The left corner of the fence is where she was. She was just sitting there staring out into the woods. She didn't move at all when I approached her. She just sat there in the dark staring into the woods, which was about 50 feet away from the fence. I didn't like this at all. She wouldn't even acknowledge me. I even mentioned giving her a treat and she didn't budge. I started to lightly pull on her collar. Nothing. Then coming from my right, I heard a stick crack. I swung the flashlight in that direction and saw a figure immediately hide behind a tree. The dog started to whine and run towards the house, and I did the same. I started at a light jog and heard something behind me. I quickly turned around out of instinct and saw something on all fours sprinting right at me. My jog instantly went into a sprint as I heard that thing get closer and closer. I made it into the house and locked the door behind me. I looked outside to see if I could see it. There's nothing out there. I stared until the automatic lights turned off. I began to close the curtains to every window and double-check the locked doors. Whatever that thing was, I knew it was probably still out there, so I went into my brother's closet and grabbed his rifle. The dogs followed me to the corner of the living room where I sat down with all the lights turned off except for the lamp on the side table. It must have been at least 2 hours as I sat there waiting. I was just going to sit there and wait for the sun to come up. Around 2 a.m. my eyes started to get heavy as I was trying to fight the urge to sleep. Just when my eyes shut, I heard a click from the automatic lights from outside. My chest was pounding. There were heavy footsteps walking across the front porch, going from left to right. They stopped right around the corner from where I was sitting. I slowly cocked the rifle. I waited to hear another noise. It felt like forever. Just when I was about to get up and move, I heard the window from that direction slowly open. I forgot to lock it. But then nothing. I thought I would hear footsteps coming in, but I didn't hear anything. Shaking, I slowly moved my head from around the corner to look at the window. What I saw paralyzed me. This thing was staring right at me. Its mouth was drooped open. It was pale with red eyes and yellow pupils. It has the face of an old man, but the skin was too pale to be anything close to human. We stared at each other for what had to be 30 seconds. I slowly pointed the rifle at it, shaking, and then pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. My brother said it was loaded. I kept squeezing the trigger and all it did was click. The creature started to make this weird noise. Without moving its head, I saw a long skinny leg creep over the threshold of the window into the house. It's inside the